welcome to First Congregational Church of Kittery, United Church of Christ. I am sorry, I totally missed the ringing of the bells, and I was trying to go around and figure out what we were doing next. But I am here, and so glad to see everyone here this morning. We are a welcoming spiritual community, anchored in love and growing in faith. It is our mission to inspire spiritual growth, nurture all families, and embrace the wider community. Every week, we offer extravagant welcome. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. My name is Beth St. John, and I am honored to be our church council chair. As many of you know, Pastor Brian has been on paternity leave for the past 12 weeks, but he's coming back, folks. Next week, he will be back. He will be back in action this coming Wednesday, August 3rd. And so this is our final Sunday of laity-led worship, and it's going to be a special one. Today, we are blessed to have our diaconate leading our worship service, and we are blessed to have a special guest among us, Robert Sapiro from Green Acre, Bahai Center of Learning, who will share with us some understandings about the Bahai faith and some information about Green Acre, the beautiful Bahai Education Center that is just up the road from us in Eliot, Maine. Thank you, Robert, for joining us today. And huge thank you to Mark Lechner for bringing Robert to us and expanding our understanding of our diverse faith communities, and for all of your efforts in planning and leading our worship service today. We'd also like to thank Deacons Suzanne Moran, Sarah Rhodes, Keith Wyatt for helping our service run smoothly today, Candace Delicio for volunteering to fill Billy's very big shoes today and to plan and lead all of our music this morning, and to Chris Kelly and John Pritchard for sharing their amazing musical gifts with us. And we'd also like to give a thank you to Leslie Colbert for ringing our bells and for volunteering to do lemonade on the lawn after our service today. Announcements. Blueberry Festival, August 13th. We need all hands on deck this year. It will start at 7:30 with a breakfast hosted by Mel and Donna Stobbs and lunch from 11 to 1. The craft fair starts at 9. Please join us in spreading the word. There is a flyer that you can download in the mooring, and you can also pick up hard copies in the parish house. And if you're on Facebook, there is a link in the mooring to share the Facebook event with your friends. We can also use your help in stockpiling blueberries. If you happen to see frozen blueberries while you're shopping, especially the ones from Wyman's Maine Blueberries, please consider purchasing some for our bakers. As far as baking and volunteering, all of our needs are in the weekly mooring. There are 2 sign-ups, one for baking and one for volunteering, either the day before or the day of the event. So please take a look at the mooring and sign up if you are able. If you have any questions, you can contact myself, Lori Smith, or Jennifer Gray. Plan your own fundraiser. I don't see John and Mary here today, but they had the event at Fort McClary yesterday from 10 to noon, the historic tour. Was anyone able to attend? Great. How did it go?
I'd like to say if the rest of the fundraisers that John Carter puts together are anywhere like what we had yesterday, you'd be well advised to get to them. It was fantastic. The guy he had there from the Parks and Recreation was phenomenally knowledgeable about local history, ancestors, people. I mean, he was rattling off names and families. You do not have a 5-minute conversation with this gentleman. It takes quite a while, and I learned an awful lot about Fort Clary and history, local history, not just the Fort Clary Dam. So it was a wonderful time. It's the ones coming from Wood Island. I've been out there with the guy who's going to be leading it, and again, it's a fantastic opportunity. So take advantage if you can.
Awesome. And would you like to go right into the siding project? Or Minna, did you have something to say too?
Yeah. The sea glass at Wood Island, if you are a sea glass collector, on the point up in the back, there's so much of it.
Oh, good to know. Thank you, Minna. I think we do have some sea glass artists among us, possibly.
Okay,
So great, thank you.
Follow up then for my granddaughter wants to speak too. Another grandmother. Following up on the paint scraping, we've made great progress. We have probably maybe one more good day to get it done. The front is about half done. The back is maybe a third done. There's not much to do. We're getting close. And follow on to that, we'll be painting. We'll be primering it on the parish house. We've got some nail holes to fill on the we'll be finishing primering the parsonage. Then on the parish house, we have some putty type stuff to fill in some of the nail holes and caulking and prime that. And then we'll be painting that probably hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So if you have interest in painting and scraping, please let me know. I'll put out an email probably later tonight on the next paint scraping part. Assuming we thanks for all who have come to help. It's been a wonderful experience.
And thank you to Rick and Gail for your leadership on this project. The only other announcement I have is that we will be having yoga for anybody Thursday at 8:30 in the parish house. Are there any other announcements? All right. Oh, yes. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank Beth because she really has been instrumental in helping me get through this summer while Brian has been away, and your leadership in coordinating these community-led services has just been phenomenal. So thank you, and thank you to every single one of you who has taken time to plan a service, or be part of the service, or perform in the service. It's just been, I have my doubts about this summer, I will admit. I have my doubts, but I have been so impressed and so pleasantly surprised at the way that our community has come together. So thank you all. That's all.
And thank you to Jennifer Gray for keeping us all on our toes. Okay, there are no other announcements. I'll turn it over to Candace and John for our prelude. For our call to worship this morning, we'll be doing it a little bit differently than normal. We'll have Mark reading the Bahai morning prayer number 40, and instead of a responsive call to worship, he will be reading it, and you can follow along in your.
That was beautiful, Candace Robert. Thanks. Well, good morning, everybody. I just wanted to give a quick shout out, once again, real quick, I know we've been doing this, to Jennifer. This church would not run so efficiently as it does, so organized, if it wasn't for Jennifer. So, good shout out to her. Baha'i morning prayer number 40. I give praise to thee, O my God, that thou hast awakened me out of my sleep and brought me forth after my disappearance and raised me up from my slumber. I have wakened this morning with my face set toward the splendors of the day star of thy revelation, through which the heavens of thy power and thy majesty have been illumined. Acknowledging thy signs, believing in thy book, and holding fast unto thy cord. I beseech thee, by the potency of thy will and the compelling power of thy purpose, to make of what thou didst reveal unto me in my sleep the surest foundation for the mansions of thy love that are within the hearts of thy loved ones, and the best instrument for the revelation of the tokens of thy grace and thy loving kindness. Do thou ordain me through thy most exalted pen, O my Lord, the good of this world and the next. I testify that within thy grasp are held the reins of all things. Thou changest them as thou pleasest. No God is there save thee, the strong and the faithful. Thou art he who changes through his bidding abasement into glory and weakness, into strength, powerlessness into might, and fear into calm, and doubt into certainty. No God is there but thee, thy mighty, the beneficent. Thou disappointest no one who holds sought thee, nor dost thou keep back from thee anyone who hath desired thee. Ordain thou for me what becometh the heaven of the generosity of the ocean and thy bounty. Thou art verily the Almighty, the most powerful.
Thank you, Mark. Please join us in our opening hymn. Number 394, In Christ There Is No East or West. And please stand as you are able. we prepare to pass the offering plate this morning, we invite everyone to show kindness to your pew neighbor by sanitizing your hands with the hand sanitizer provided in each pew. We believe in the God of justice and righteousness, and God believes in us to carry forth the mission of loving and caring for community. God has blessed us all with many gifts. Let us share our gifts and resources so that we may continue to walk humbly with God and with our neighbors. If you feel called to offer a monetary gift to support our ministries or to support the historic buildings that we are called to steward, you may place your gift in the offering plate, or you may donate online by going to our website, kitterypointucc.org, and clicking on the Donate Here button. And as we are passing the plate, we will have music, Blind Mary, performed by Chris Kelly on the hammered dulcimer, John Pritchard on recorder, and Candace Delicio on the harp. Thank you so much. Please join me in a prayer of dedication. Blessed by God's loving hand, we bless these gifts that they may be used to shine light and love on a world so clearly in need. Amen. Please stand as you are able and join us in the doxology. Our scripture today is from the Bahai prayer book, and Mark is going to do
Thanks again. Thanks for the beautiful music as well. This is prayer number 18. Oh my God, we are servants of thine that have turned with devotion to thy holy face, that have detached ourselves from all besides thee in the glorious day. We have gathered in this spiritual assembly, united in our views and thoughts, with our purposes harmonized to exalt the word amidst mankind. O Lord, our God, make us the signs of thy divine guidance and standards of thine exalted faith amongst men, servants to thy mighty covenant. O thou our Lord, most high, manifestations of thine divine unity in thy kingdom, resonant stars shining upon all religions. Lord, aid us to become seas surging with the billows of thy wondrous grace, streams flowing from thine all-glorious heights, goodly fruits upon the tree of thy heavenly cause, trees waving through the breezes of thy bounty in the celestial vineyard. O God, make our souls dependent upon the verses of thy divine unity, our hearts cheered with the outpourings of thy grace, that we may unite, even as the waves of one sea, and become merged together as the rays of thine effulgent light, that our thoughts, our views, our feelings may become as one reality, manifesting the spirit of union throughout the world. Thou art the gracious, the bountiful, the bestower, the almighty, the merciful, the compassionate. Prayer number 64. O God, refresh and gladden my spirit, purify my heart, illumine my powers. I lay all of my affairs in thy hand. Thou art my guide and my refuge. I will no longer be sorrowful and grieved. I will be happy and joyful being. O God, I will no longer be full of anxiety, nor will I let trouble harass me. I will not dwell on the unpleasant things of life. O God, thou art more friend to me than I am myself. I dedicate myself to thee.
We are blessed today to have another musical piece, Reverie by John Pritchard on the Native American flute. today, we are honored to have Robert Sapiro with us. Would you like to come up here, or where do you feel most comfortable?
Why not? Hello, everyone. So wonderful to see you all this morning. What an extraordinarily beautiful morning this is. Something a little bit unexpected happened when I arrived here. Well, one thing wasn't unexpected, but I was so happy to have it. I looked on the website, it's welcoming everyone, and I really have felt so incredibly welcomed since the moment I stepped over here. So I really, really appreciate that. And so, I think oftentimes we strive to do things as a community, and sometimes we're striving with words, not with actions, but I really felt that welcome here today, and so grateful. The unexpected thing that happened to me was remembering clearly that my great-grandmother, Elizabeth Moore, was a member of the Congregational Church. And she was the one stalwart person, the one non-judgmental, the one consistently loving person in my growing up. In a family that, probably like many others, was ravaged by addiction, domestic violence, racism, sexism, all kinds of things that families face. She was one who was loving to all. You couldn't find anybody in a family that could barely say nice things about each other. Nobody ever said anything other than loving words about her, because she never said anything but loving words about everyone else. So I was just hit with that spirit of that. One thing I wanted to there's a couple of things I wanted to just share immediately, just to kind of clear up. So one, well, it seems like Mark has made the expectations fairly high for my talk, so I wanted to lower the expectations from the beginning, if that was possible. He also told me I had 3.5 hours to talk, so I don't know if that was accurate or not. But I may actually pull out my phone to remind me, or somebody can just give me the hook or something. But about 15, 20 minutes, is that? Okay, so 3.5 hours it is, and wow, that Robert guy just never stopped talking. So with the Baha'i faith, there aren't clergy, and so I'll share a little bit about how the Baha'i faith is organized a little bit later, but I'm not a clergy person. So what you're hearing from me is Robert's limited view of the Baha'i faith. And one of the core principles about the Baha'i faith is independent investigation of truth. So that's one of the things, so you'll hear me say some things, and if you're interested in and curious, please investigate. Don't take my word for it. The other interesting thing that happened to me on my way here yesterday, I have been thinking a little bit about what would I share, how would I share it, what would be important to people, what would be meaningful, so I had all these thoughts in my head, and a friend of mine mysteriously gave me a bunch of index cards. She had just finished up a program at Green Acre. She had organized this week for youth, about 40 youth from around the country, exploring what would it mean to reconceptualize our idea of blackness in the world. And as we know, and it was such an interesting exercise at the beginning of her program where she asked all the youth, tell us the stereotypes you've heard, right? And she's like, not because I haven't heard the stereotypes, she's an African-American woman who has heard everything and more, but she said, even if you don't believe all those things, they're still in your head. So they listed off a whole bunch of things. So this week was kind of a way to explore that, and it was a really beautiful and profound week. The small mysterious thing that happened is she had a bunch of these index cards, which she handed me. Like, why do I have index cards? And I'm like, oh, this will actually help organize my talk. This is good. So we're hoping that the index cards work. No guarantees on that. So one of the things that came to my heart when I was thinking about talking to all of you today, many things came to my heart. One, I was just so grateful for the invitation. And just so thankful that Mark had reached out to share. It's one of these things that I long to do. And, as I meet more people in this community, I've been here for about 7 years in the Seacoast, I just long to be able to talk to more people about things. There's so many things that we agree on, and we feel in common, and we want to do together. There are so many more important things that we don't agree on and don't understand each other about, which we also need to figure out. I think both those things are essential, right? But I just to have this opportunity to be with you I just feel really, really, really grateful. And one of the things, I grew up not as a religious person at all. By the time religion had come to my growing up, we had generations of confusion about religion. So my grandfather was born here in the United States, but he was first generation Jewish immigrant from actually what is now the Ukraine. So his family arrived in Portland, Maine. My grandmother was first generation Irish immigrant who also arrived in Portland, Maine, and was Catholic. And they had known each other since second grade and had wanted to get married and could not until they were in their 30s because their parents wouldn't allow them to be married. And then when they did get married, they ended up forming kind of a religious demilitarized zone where nobody practiced anything except for guilt. Both are really good. I mean, if they have a core of strength, right, and unity. So my dad, is, an atheist, right? And my mom was, my grandfather was Italian, came over, and he was Catholic. And he married the daughter of my great-grandmother, who was a Congregationalist. But she had to convert to Catholicism in order to get married. So everything was wide open in my search. But I also grew up kind of with an anti-religious worldview because it had caused all this conflict. And so I still have that, I sometimes still feel nervous or scared about talking about religion or faith or God. Because people, often for good reasons, don't, they have reasons that they feel concerned about talking about those things. So that's another reason why I feel grateful to be able to share with you some of that. But I think the big question on my mind was, what does faith mean in 2022? What does it mean in this world that we're living in right now? From a Baha'i view, there are two things happening in the world right now. One is the forces of disintegration. And we can feel this. I mean, you only have to, pop into one of our screens here to have a sense of how those forces of disintegration are moving throughout the world and continue to move. And, having grown up in a fairly privileged way in New England with often a lot of security, I didn't always know what those things meant. But of course, here I am in 2022, and we're in the midst of a pandemic, so those kinds of threats, but then all of the things going on in the world. But the strange and interesting thing that Baha'is also believe is that there are forces of integration happening at the same time. And that as things begin to fall apart in so many ways, that there's a possibility for us to build something new together. that's even stronger and even more meaningful. And really, I mean, it is ultimately an existential threat, I think, for humanity, right? For us to figure out a way for us to come together. And in some ways, it's possible that these crises that are moving around the entire planet are helping us to bring a consciousness of our oneness, you know, really of the true unity of the human family. And that's one of the sort of core beliefs about the Baha'i faith, is the oneness of humanity, believing that we're all one human family. The same friend who organized this course said, "Yeah, but have you seen our families?" Anyway, but I think there is this organic wholeness, and it's interesting because I'm often, partly because I serve at Green Acre as the administrator, and of course we use the principles of the Baha'i faith for what we're doing, and so the oneness of humanity is our core principle. That's really what our primary thing is. But that's not an easy thing. You know, sometimes it feels great to say that. Oh, we're all one, right? You know, but then when I'm face to face with somebody who I deeply disagree with, right? Who I don't understand what they're saying or why they're saying it or how they're acting, that oneness of humanity, that's the challenge. Because I am linked with them no matter what. So how do I turn to my higher self? How do I ask them to turn to their higher selves to be able to do this new thing that we need to do together? So that's one of those questions that I have. And the other thing that's interrelated to this is sort of what does humanity need right now? What is it that we need? And I know for me, and probably for many of you and all of the people in the world, it's easy to look at the ills that are besetting us, right? That's unavoidable. If only this wouldn't happen. If only that wouldn't happen. If only this wasn't going on. And I desire that too. And I have to think, well, what are we building? Right? Who do we want the next generation to be? Right? Who do we want to become? And I think that's a harder question to answer, and the one that we need to answer is how do we raise ourselves up? How do we raise our children? How do we raise our grandchildren? How do we raise our communities up to have those characteristics that we know are needed right now? Not just the characteristics we don't want, although that's important to know, but what are the things that we really want to create together? What are those things? The Baha'is are organized through a series of, you could call them councils, I guess, the spiritual assembly. Actually, that prayer that was read is for the local spiritual assembly. So in any location in the world where there are 9 Baha'is or more, there's this elected body of people who help to organize the community's affairs. There's also, at the national level, there's a national spiritual assembly, and then at the international level, there's a Universal House of Justice. So the Universal House of Justice shares, it's such a fascinating thing, because over the last 25 years intensely, but sort of all along, there's been an effort at becoming a worldwide learning community. To be able to try experiments with things in community building in different parts of the globe, and then share what's being learned and try and put some of those things into practice in other parts of the world. And so the Universal House of Justice, through a whole series of things, came across one particular method and approach that seemed to be effective in community building, happening in Colombia in South America. The Baha'is there had experienced, it was a very, very small community of Baha'is in the 1970s. There were 15 people who were Baha'is in Colombia. Within the space of about 5 years, there were 40,000 Baha'is. and no clergy. So they were faced with a question of, how do you build spiritual community at the grassroots? How do you create something that would allow each and every person to be able to contribute to community life? And so they developed, through a method of learning which was completely linked to action. There was no separation. They built a process that empowered individuals to be able to take part and contribute to community life. So some of the main needs at the time were people came in, there was need to learn a little bit about what this faith that they had joined. There was that question, right? So they were able to have folks learn how to visit each other in their homes and share different parts of the community life. The next need was the spiritual education of children. So they developed a way to do that so anybody could become an educator of the children. Then they realized, there's this need for folks who are between 12 and 14, we call them junior youth, but that youth, they have a keen sense of justice. They have a keen sense of knowing what's in the world, and they now are able to see the world in a way that they weren't as children, right? And they're like, wait, what about this? What about that? And realizing there was a need for the spiritual empowerment of that age in particular. And then there was a need for the youth who were right there to be able to not only develop themselves on a path, but then to also be able to help those before them. So a process for which those youth could then help with the spiritual education of children, with the spiritual empowerment of junior youth, and building community life. So in Colombia, in South America, they developed this. And then, because of this worldwide learning process, they began to adopt parts of those, and sort of every part of the world now has these activities based on these materials. But of course, other things are being learned now that that's happening. So I say all that because I wanted to share something from the Universal House of Justice that they wrote recently to the worldwide Baha'i community based on this learning that they're seeing. The Baha'i faith is the second most widespread religion in the world next to Christianity. There's only about 8 million Baha'is in the world, but there are Baha'is kind of everywhere. And so they're learning how this community building process might happen in the Philippines, in South Africa, in Japan, in Eliot, Maine, all of these different places around the world. But they wrote this thing which felt so inspiring, and it felt to me like when I was sort of asked to convey what do the Baha'is believe, or what are they trying to do, or what's going on. I thought this might be helpful. Now, the other thing to mention is that within the context, Baha'is have had a series of global plans. So it mentions plan. So right now, they've just begun for the Baha'is a 9-year plan. When I say that, that's what that means. So they describe it this way: the enkindled souls being raised up through the processes of the plan are seeking to gain an ever more profound understanding of Baha'u'llah's teachings, the sovereign remedy for every disease, and to apply them to the needs of society. And it's this next part that I thought was helpful and clear. So they are committed to the prosperity of all, recognizing that the welfare of the individual rests in the welfare of society at large. They are loyal citizens who eschew partisanship and the contest for worldly power. Baha'is also use big vocabulary words. So you guys probably know what eschew means. I had to look it up. But it means that they don't get involved in partisanship or the contest of worldly power. Instead, they're focused on transcending differences, harmonizing perspectives, and promoting the use of consultation for making decisions. They emphasize qualities and attitudes such as trustworthiness, cooperation, and forbearance. Another good vocabulary word I had to look up. To overlook the faults of others, right? Or that's part of what it is, forbearance. So they emphasize these qualities and attitudes that are the building blocks of a stable social order. They champion rationality and science as essential for human progress. They advocate tolerance and understanding, and with the inherent oneness of humanity uppermost in their minds, they view everyone as a potential partner to collaborate with. And they strive to foster fellow feeling even among groups that may traditionally have been hostile to one another. They are conscious of how the forces of materialism are at work around them. And their eyes are wide open to the many injustices that are occurring in the world, that persist. Yet they are equally clear-sighted about the creative power of unity and humanity's capacity for altruism. They see the power of true religion. They see the power that true religion possesses to transform hearts and overcome distrust. And so, with confidence in what the future holds, they labor to cultivate the conditions in which progress can occur. They share their beliefs liberally with others, remaining respectful of the freedom of conscience of every soul. And they never impose their standards on anyone. And while they would not pretend to have discovered all the answers, they are clear about what they have learned and what they still need to learn. Their efforts advance in alternating rhythms of action and reflection. Setbacks leave them unfazed. In places where growing numbers are helping to build communities of this character, the power of the Baha'i cause to transform people's social existence as well as their inner lives is becoming increasingly visible. It's quite a vision of things. I don't know how many. Sometimes I read this and I'm like, I only got one out of that list of things, right? And then I can't live up to that either. So that's a little bit of a problem. But I wanted to share that because that's sort of the spirit of what Baha'is are striving to do in this area. And I'm realizing the 20 minutes out of my 3 hours is coming to an end here. But I guess I just wanted to share one more thing kind of locally, since we're here together in this community, about Greenacre, which, I was thinking about the mission of what you described, and it's very much, very, very similar. We're seeking to welcome everyone and seeking to connect with the community. One of the things that we've been learning about intensely over the last couple of years is how do we understand race and racism and through the lens of the oneness of humanity? That's been one of these big core questions. And it has been at Greenacre for a long time. In 1929, there was a race amity conference in Eliot, Maine at Greenacre. So the gathering of black and white, in 1929. So this has been a question that's been asked in many ways over time. So one of the things that we've discovered, that others have as well, of course, but is that sometimes when we have conversations about race and racism, you'll see familiar patterns. And sometimes the conversations don't go that far, right? You get stuck in a certain kind of back and forth or certain understandings, right? And it can be challenging and frustrating and confusing and whatnot. Simultaneously, we're exploring the power of artistic expression and what artistic expression can do. And came across this idea that, oh, wait a second. There are things that can be expressed through art that couldn't be expressed easily in a conversation. And there are things that can be heard through art that couldn't necessarily be heard in a conversation. And it's when you do that, when you have some experience of those together, then you can sometimes create a third conversation, since those things have been heard, expressed and heard. So right now we're in the midst of doing an Afrofuturism art show at Green Acre, exploring what it would be like if folks from the African diaspora were not only part of our future vision, but central to it. What would that look like? So it's been a really interesting exploration with events and artwork and conversations. And the other thing I wanted to leave you with too is we did this thing last summer called Project Empathy, where we got 4 partners together. Each person wrote something really personal, a personal story about themselves, and then their partner had to tell it in the first person on stage. So Najee Brown, who helped to organize that and was our artist in residence, looked at people in the community and tried to get the most diverse group of people he possibly could to do this process. And so 2 of those people, one was Tanisha Johnson, who was the co-founder of Seacoast Black Lives Matter. And the other is the police chief in Eliot, Maine, Eliot Moya. So they were partners. So they had to not only listen to each other, but they had to tell each other's story on stage. And through that process, they became genuine friends. They actually have discovered all these things they have in common. They're like brother and sister now. And they still don't agree on some really big things that matter a lot to both of them. We are, this Monday, tomorrow, we're going to be releasing a podcast with the 2 of them called The Conversations We Should Be Having. So I guess that's it. There's more, obviously more I can say, you can tell from me. But and I'm happy to chat afterwards, and so grateful for the opportunity to be with you all today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Robert. I felt such a sense of hope and compassion, deep love from your stories, from your explanation of both the history of the Baha'i faith and also what you're doing today. So excited. I'd love to learn more, and I'd love to organize a field trip. I'd love to see the campus and learn more about it and attend some of the exciting events that you're having. So thank you so much. As we move into our time of prayer, are there any joys or concerns that anyone would like to lift up this morning? Milton.
Prayer for Eastern Kentucky.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for lifting that up. Prayers for Eastern Kentucky, where they've had so much rain and flooding, and the forecast is forecasting more. So prayers.
I'd like to raise up the joy. The first one I had resonated, of course, with the congregation, and I think Jen mentioned the thankfulness that we have, Beth, for you and Jen, the leadership that you've shown. But then from the bigger picture, I wanted to raise up the joy for God's opportunity that He's given us these last 12 weeks. I, for one, have been very appreciative that we've had a chance to, and hopefully we continue this, give the congregate a voice, right? So God has given us that opportunity to do that, not only voice, but also in music. And I think we grow when we kind of go beyond our comfort traditions, right? Our church is born in traditions, which is fantastic, certainly. But to kind of go beyond that is when we grow most. So the past 12 weeks have been great. I'd like to raise that.
Thank you. They have been amazing for me. the way everyone has come together to help, the folks who have volunteered to speak, to do other parts of the service. It has been just a beautiful collaboration. And I feel so much more connection with all of you, with our faith. So thank you, Keith, for lifting that up. Thank you to all of you for participating in this laity-led worship. Suzanne.
Yeah, one of our deacons, Dave Bradstreet, had ankle surgery this week, and the ankle surgery was successful, but I gathered from Paul's wife that it will be a very long road to healing.
Absolutely. So thank you, Suzanne, for lifting that up. Dave Bradstreet, one of our deacons, Dave and Paula, prayers for Dave as he just had ankle surgery, and the surgery went well, but he will have a lengthy recovery. So prayers for both Dave and for Paula as he cares for Dave during his recovery. Mark.
I just want to say one more time, thank you. Thank you so much for this. I was really excited to do this, and I was really excited to meet with Robert, hoping that we can continue this sort of service every now and then to invite some other faiths, so that again we can become a oneness, learn about other faiths, and very much thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, I have the same hope, hoping that we can continue these collaborations, partnerships, learning about the diverse faith community around us, how we can all work together. Gudrun.
Prayers again for my daughter Stephanie, that hopefully she will not need surgery.
Yes, prayers for Gudrun's daughter Stephanie, and as she recovers and looks towards future of either future recovery or surgery. So prayers for Stephanie and her family as we're caring for her. Garvin.
Yeah, we have a joy and a concern. Our granddaughter Erin is returning to Denver today, and she's a period of her life where she's having to make some broad directional decisions, and so we wish her well as she goes back, and that's it.
Thank you. And thank you to Erin for joining us today and for being one of the inspiring collaborators in our laity-led worship. Thank you. We look forward to seeing more. And I forgot, since we are live streaming to YouTube, Jennifer is texting me some of the joys and concerns from our YouTube family. Prayers for young people heading off to college with little or no parent support. Specifically, Kaylee is one of the folks that someone is asking prayers for as she heads off to college. Prayers for Pastor Brian as he begins to shift from full-time family more back to full-time ministry. And prayers for all of those suffering with chronic illness. And I have a joy I would like, a couple of joys. One is for the beautiful music. Candace carefully selected our musical pieces today, and they just are creating this gorgeous whole. Thank you for that. Thank you for also inviting musical friends to join us and prepare for us such gorgeous music. Thank you, John. Thank you, Chris. And I'd also like to thank Sarah Rhodes for preparing this gorgeous bouquet of flowers for us. Prepared by herself. Thank you. It's beautiful. Anything else this morning? Seeing none. Let me check and make sure Jennifer didn't send me something else. Okay. Please join me in the spirit of prayer. Gracious and loving God, you invite us to hold the needs of our sisters and brothers as dear to us as our own. You call us to love and serve you with our whole being by loving each and every one of our neighbors as ourselves. Open our ears to hear your word and draw us closer to you, that the whole world may be one with you as we are one, as you are one with us in Jesus Christ. In peace, we pray to you, O God, for the victims of hunger, fear, injustice, and oppression, for those who suffer in time of war, for all who are in danger, sorrow, or any kind of trouble, for those who are sick and those who minister to them, for those who mourn, for those facing difficult decisions, for those who feel alone, and for the special needs, concerns, and joys of our community that have been lifted up today. God of mercy and healing, who hears the cries of those in need, receive these prayers of your people, the ones that are spoken and the ones that ring out silently within our hearts. Open our hearts in compassion and pour out your strength and courage upon us, that we may serve one another generously and faithfully in your name. Guide us in the path of discipleship, so that if you have blessed us, we may be a blessing for others by our words of comfort and our acts of love. Create in us a tenderness to the needs of all, an openness to everyone's gifts, and a commitment to the struggle for justice. And remind us who you are for us and who you call us to be, as we pray with the words Jesus taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Now please join us in our closing hymn, Bring Many Names, number 11. And please stand as you are able.
Bring many names.
for our benediction today, Mark and Candace had a beautiful idea. They wanted to share the beautiful line that is in, the beautiful quote that is in the top of your bulletin. And can you help me say that name, Robert? The Baha'u'llah?
Baha'u'llah.
Baha'u'llah.
Yes, Baha'u'llah.
From Baha'u'llah. In the garden of thy heart, plant not but the rose of love. Go forth in peace and love. Amen.